The betrayal of the black community is unbelievable, what's happened. It's unbelievable. Democrats bowed at the feet of special interests and trapped your children in failing government schools. You look at the schools.
President Trump attacking Democratic mayors today while he was here in Atlanta, saying they are failing the African-American communities. His event downtown kicking off an outreach campaign for black voters with about 400 people in the room at the Georgia World Congress Center to hear him speak.
Drive up here today?
Yes, sir.
How come?
Because I wanted to support Trump because he's the greatest president America and especially black people has ever had.
And why do you say that?
Because he opened the prison houses.
I love him. He's a superhero. That's the way I see him.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
The president is now on his way back to D.C., but will be heading south again tomorrow. He will attend the Alabama LSU game. The president's visit comes 12 days before Democratic presidential candidates meet at Tyler Perry Studios for another debate. Joining me now live from the Georgia World Congress Center is 11 Alive political analyst Dr. Andra Gillespie. Andra, you just heard President Trump speak about this campaign, Black Voices for Trump. Talk about why this demographic is so important to this campaign for re-election.
Well, I think it's really important that President Trump chose to launch this event here in Georgia. Georgia has become electorally more competitive in the last decade, as evidenced by the narrow margins in both the presidential and gubernatorial elections in recent years. And so given the fact that this national strategy that both Democrats and Republicans have to take will involve perhaps contesting states that have previously not been contested in recent memory, it's not surprising that President Trump would try to reach out to African-American voters to try to shore up his overall support in the state where he won by a narrow margin in 2016.
Perhaps not uphill battle. The latest NBC poll last month saying 81% of African-American voters in Georgia not approving of the way the president's handling his job in office.
And not only that, historically, since 1964, African Americans in national elections have voted overwhelmingly for Democratic candidates. So the general rule of thumb is that Republicans can expect to get about 10% of the African American vote. That was about true in 2016, and we would expect that that's still going to be the case in 2020.
Georgia, the epicenter right now for politics in many ways. Talk about the significance for our state that the president and the vice president visited today, and then the Democratic presidential candidates all coming to town within just a couple of weeks of today's visit.
Well, I mean, it's sort of this narrative of the fact that elections are becoming more competitive here. So Georgia has 2 Senate seats that are up next year, so that's always going to bring a lot of attention to the state. Democrats have said for the last few years that they intended to make Georgia blue, and they are succeeding in making it more purple. And so for that reason, President Trump and the Republican Party can't take votes in this state for granted from anybody from any background. And I think they came here with the intent of showing that. I also think it's important to keep in mind that a lot of really prominent African-American Republican surrogates live here. Herman Cain is one of the co-chairs of this new venture that was announced today. Bruce Lavelle, his national diversity chairman from 2016, lives here. Alveda King. Many of these people were pointed out in the audience today, so it's also not surprising that President Trump would come to their home turf to announce this outreach effort.
All right. Dr. Andra Gillespie, thanks so much for the time.